everyone. So this week we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what I do, how different types of social service collaborations might fit together in this way, and how to apply some of those assistance to some of those needs that you all have been talking about. And I'll talk in another video a little bit about evaluating inclusive environments, supporting staff, and that sort of thing. But this week I really want to talk about dealing with, or this video I want to talk about dealing with the public and how we can support individuals and how that may or may not look in different environments. So I'm going to be talking a lot about the ideas and needs that you all have been bringing up and try to address those individually, and maybe it would be helpful for others, maybe it's something that you haven't thought about before, so we're just going to dive a little bit deeper. So a lot of what I do is meeting customer needs. So it's a vast majority of what I do is assisting individuals with meeting their needs. The other part of what I do is fostering a healthier and better community environment through public education and community programming. And then, like I said, I'll talk a little bit about in another video about evaluating the library environment and supporting staff. So when it comes to meeting customer needs, like I said, a lot of what I do, it can be across the spectrum of different things that might come up. Education and employment. So I kind of break it down into 4 different areas: education and employment, family matters, emergency services, and health improvement. So education and employment, this might be exploring different options, understanding that a lot of individuals maybe have not navigated these different systems before, and this will come up in multiple different areas. So some people have never heard of a FAFSA and how to fill that out, and maybe it's related to taxes and getting assistance with support programs that will help them do their taxes. Finding a tutor, finding English language learning classes, all those sorts of things. It's connecting to a lot of those different resources in the community that exist, and also sometimes explaining to individuals how they can apply for FAFSA, how they can get that student loan assistance, and maybe how to apply for different job programs. Unemployment has come up a lot. This is definitely a COVID, I think, spike that has been happening, is how to apply for those types of things and get those different financial resources like state aid for food share, for food stamps, whatever it is that you call it in your state, or state-based health insurance and that sort of thing, or how to navigate the marketplace when a job loss happens. All sorts of different things that can come up. So if you have a social worker that you're working with, or if you're working with a community partner, they can maybe assist directly with doing some of that. So something that I noticed was I have a lot of individuals that are needing assistance with job help. So I have a friend that works over at the job center, and he's very familiar with the variety of different programs that are offered. So it's not just one go-to program that we have for job assistance. There is specific ones for individuals who are elderly or disabled, individuals who have children, singles, different income levels, all sorts of different things. There's one that we have for individuals who are quite young and don't have any job experience, and that's his kind of specialty, this person that I bring over a lot, but again, he knows those programs better than I do. And so right before COVID hit, we were actually setting it up so that he would come on a reoccurring basis, so we could advertise, Eric will be here from 1 to 5 every Monday. And that way the community would know, okay, I can expect that Eric will be there. I know that I can go see him and get my specific questions answered related to applying to those programs and honestly recruiting into those programs that are great resources for people to have. And I know a lot of people talk about that issue of, well, people want help right now. Yeah, that's true sometimes. But when they know that there's going to be a resource that will be coming in, that can kind of shift that attitude towards, I know I can meet with so-and-so at this time. So that's what they plan for instead of just coming into the library and expecting help at that time. But that does still happen sometimes, and maybe it's not possible. Maybe your nearest job center or workforce resource specialist or whatever you have in your county is far away, and it's hard for you to get someone in on a regular basis. Well, maybe you can work with them to provide tip sheets. So tip sheets that break down what the different types of programs are, and then screenshots of how to apply for these different programs, because I've noticed that is a huge thing that comes up, is not knowing how to navigate these websites. So if they can have something that they can pull up and it says, okay, I can see right here what the page is supposed to look like, that can be so helpful. So in many of these different areas, I highly recommend, if you have the capacity to do it yourself, or if you have a social worker to do it, or a community resource that's willing to work with you to get those tip sheets together, that can be really helpful for those I need help right now issues, right? So that's just one application of some of that work. Family matters. So this can be parenting, childcare, elder issues, domestic violence, all of that. So this quadrant of work can be quite vast. So I know someone had brought up parenting and how they would like to add more classes to their community, and I highly, highly support that. That's something that I am working towards too, is how can we provide these adulting classes for our community members to help fill those needs and fill those gaps. So that would be looking into the health department, your WIC program locally, possibly even a domestic violence or sexual assault shelter might have a family advocate that's willing to run classes. We have a dual program in the county next door to us that serves our area that has domestic violence, sexual assault, and then they also have really intensive parenting and child classes, which are so phenomenal and amazing. So being able to bring them in for something like that, exploring what's out there, you might be surprised how you could get those needs met. So knowing that, yes, people need that education, right? Everyone can always do better when it comes to parenting. There is no such thing as being an expert in that issue. So yes, partner with those. We had run one last fall, I believe it was just a one session, and we had done a drive alongside it, so individuals could bring in diapers, new baby bottles, things like that, anything that individuals might need, so we can help fill that gap in the community for individuals that might need it, along with providing that educational support. Really cool how that worked out. So elder issues. So this can be, again, a wide variety of things that might come up. So we have our Aging and Disability Resource Center, which is a phenomenal, phenomenal resource, but sometimes people just have a barrier of getting there or not knowing all of the wide variety of things that they supply and do. So it can be anything from needing assistance with filling out applications to Meals on Wheels, to maybe they feel like they have been taken advantage of, they're financially being taken advantage of or something like that. So knowing that there is that resource available and being able to connect individuals right away to that resource. So someone had discussed in one of the comments, and I mentioned it last week, the whole social work collaboration thing is so great because it is right there when people need it. And taking it a step further is understanding that, yes, when people are struggling, when their frontal lobe is not working as well as it should be because of all the stress hormones that are being triggered inside their body, it is helpful to have someone who can help guide them through the process right then and there. So it is calling that resource with them to make an appointment. It is calling their insurance company with them to figure out what is in network and out of network, because that is something that not a lot of people know how to do. They just think that they can go to, if they have the insurance, they can go anywhere, right? But knowing that there's a difference sometimes between what hospitals and service providers you can utilize is new to some individuals. So being able to have someone to help them navigate that in that moment is so helpful. And again, so with the elder issues, being able to make sure that wow, I'm hearing that something sounds not right with this situation, with this person, and I feel like they might be getting taken advantage of. So that's when you can connect to a resource right away who might be able to come and interview that person and find out whether or not there is something not so good going on, and getting them the support that they need so that they can be safer. Really awesome collaboration to be able to work together to do that. Lastly, in family matters, I think of domestic violence. So I have the luxury of being a former advocate in domestic violence and sexual assault, so I've been able to carry a lot of that content and information with me. So understanding the unique needs of being able to have someone here in the library where they can come and they maybe tell their abuser, right, that I'm going to the library to check out some materials. And sure enough, yes, they're coming to the library, but they're also able to meet with a social worker in a safe place. Being able to provide restraining order documentation. So it's come up a few times, well, I'm not a lawyer, I cannot provide legal advice, and librarians say that, and that is so, so true. But what we can do is we can offer resources to help them meet their needs. I have to admit that even being raised with a father who was a police officer, I did not understand so much of the legal mumbo jumbo about like all the things they throw in paperwork. Like, what's the difference between a plaintiff, a defendant, a petitioner, all these little things that really trip people up and get people's anxiety raising when they have to file for a order of protection. They have to file for divorce, or petitioning to with children in custody. All those different things can be such a overwhelming process. So if you can provide some type of tip sheet, if it's a copy from a book like Legal Paperwork for Dummies, one of those things that comes up a lot, that can help explain how to do this process by yourself. That's not being a lawyer or providing legal advice. It is providing a resource that individuals can utilize to get to that. And knowing maybe in those cases, so for example in Wisconsin we have something called Judicare, and Judicare is an application that individuals that are low income can fill out to get a free or low cost lawyer service. So cool, so awesome. So knowing that that's a resource that exists, providing that in some of those tip sheets that you provide might be helpful. We also have a partnership with the Eau Claire County Bar Association, where they come in on a monthly basis and have a 4-hour long workshop where they allow individuals to have little mini consultations with a lawyer. So with COVID, this has actually ceased at the moment, but I'm working very hard to try to find a way that we can adapt this into a more COVID-friendly service. So it will likely be some sort of virtual service where individuals who do not have access to a safe place to talk or computer or internet services will be able to sign up to utilize library resources to be able to chat with a lawyer virtually. So knowing that there's collaborations like that can exist, that honestly, depending on the size of your county and your community, will probably depend on what a commitment it is for lawyers, but we have found that on a monthly basis, it is high demand and been highly missed right now during COVID, especially with evictions likely coming up pretty quickly here. Individuals have higher tensions in their household. They're spending so much more time together. There's likely going to be an increase in divorces, child custody issues, and all of that that's going to come from this. We are nearing winter, and in Wisconsin that is an awful, awful time of year. I mean, some people enjoy it, but I don't. But there tends to be a increase in domestic violence and other issues because people are crammed in spaces together. And now we are just basically creating a year-long cycle of individuals being crammed together, and that is not helpful or healthy and causing an increase in legal services that are needed. So all of that to say, if you can find some type of a partnership with a bar association, or even at minimum providing some type of tip sheets, you can do that, right? That's not being a lawyer or replacing a lawyer's services. It is finding a closer connection to people to get what they need right away and sooner, so they're not mulling for months over these struggles, and by that time they're homeless, they're evicted, they're out on the street, right? So trying to get people help as soon as possible so that that does not happen. And so that kind of rolls into a lot of the work that I do in the emergency services criteria. So housing is the number one ask that I have people come to me for. So that's filling out paperwork. So that is a huge gap that I noticed right away, is that there are not services for individuals who do not, they're not literate, or maybe they have dyslexia, or maybe they have injuries that prevent them from being able to write well. Or I just helped a gentleman last week who had a significant neurological condition, and part of the medication he takes makes it even worse, and just couldn't focus. And for me, being able to write down, all that information in that paperwork for him went probably 10 times faster than it could have ever happened on his own. I provided sticky notes to make sure he knew where to follow through. So just having some of those tools that that individual didn't have. And that's, again, a huge gap we found in our community for applying for a variety of resources. This can happen with applying for Medicaid, applying for health insurance, and those food services. So again, that is I'd say a significant portion of what I do is meeting those basic needs. And I will sidetrack into Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is a psychology concept that we consider a lot in social work, and it's knowing that we have to meet people's basic needs first in order for things to get better, and in order for people's behaviors and attitudes and everything else to get better. So having some compassion and understanding for needing to meet those basic needs first. So something that we started doing during this pandemic is actually also to provide food bags. So we partnered with the local food distributor for food pantries, and we receive grocery bags of some just essentials that individuals can take. And we also provided snack bags, so these are ready to eat foods. So for individuals who maybe don't have sufficient kitchen access, maybe they're living in a motel, or they're camping, or they're on the streets, those are all great ready to eat things. Or maybe they're just people who happen to come to your library and are hungry at that moment. I notice this happens a lot more with kids, because kids don't hide it as much, and they'll say, I'm hungry, right? I haven't had something to eat today. My school wasn't in session today, and my parents were gone, and I've just been, monkeying around town all day without anything to eat. So those types of things happen, I think, more often than we think, but the kids are a lot more honest about when that happens. So being able to provide, hey, you know what, we've got these shelf-stable microwave meals that we can get you, and that sort of thing. So food has been something that we've kind of amped up our awareness of needing to meet that need during COVID. And I have a feeling it's going to be an ongoing thing. I also do crisis support. So some individuals discussed that, yes, there are times where an individual is in the library setting that is disruptive in some way, or overstimulated, maybe making other customers feel uncomfortable, things like that. And that is why it is so great to have someone, if you can, on staff at all times, especially if you have a larger presence of individuals who are vulnerable. So being able to work with those individuals, and I'm not going to explain all the different ways that I can do this, but being able to meet their needs, to be able to de-escalate that individual, get them out the door if needed, or whatever it may be. I also know people sometimes bring up, sleeping in the library. And again, that's some of our trauma-informed thinking to be able to say, how do we approach sleeping in the library? And something I always do is, when I need to wake an individual up because they're snoring or whatever it may be, first thing I do is I introduce myself and offer them a water bottle or a cup of coffee. So first thing that I do is to try to be, have some hospitality to the experience, and not saying, yo, wake up, you can't sleep here. It is, I realize you were falling asleep. I'm guessing you just are having one of those days. I get it. Would you like a cup of water or a cup of coffee? I can get that for you. And it tends to break the ice a little bit and help open up a conversation for, if they want to talk, what's going on in their life or what else can they use. And if not, they're awake, right? They're now awake, they've got a cup of water, a cup of coffee, they're going to be a little bit happier, and they're going to potentially avoid some negative situations happening. So, variety of things that can happen with crisis support, whether it be someone sleeping to someone who is overstimulated or angry or whatever it may be. I will talk a little bit in another video about some of our philosophies and how they're changing, and how we are managing what would be considered unsafe behavior. So we'll go into that later. So lastly, in these quadrants of things that I do, I'll talk about health improvement. So mental health services, physical health, health insurance, and substance use are kind of the four main things that come up in the health improvement category. So mental health. Heard you guys talk about it, and yes, it is so true that this is often an unmet or undermet need in many communities. We are so lucky to be a huge hub that we have tons of providers, but the problem is, because we serve such a great area around us, many counties, people come in for services in our county, and we actually, sometimes, depending on where you go, it can be a 2-month wait to see a therapist and things like that. That is horrible, right? When people need a therapist, when people need treatment, they need it now. So being able to sit with an individual, call their insurance provider, find out what's in network for them. I will do the grunt work of finding out who is going to be someone that they can see quickest, or finding out which treatment program they can get into right away, and I know a lot of times which ones to avoid. Like the big hospitals are typically the ones that I avoid if possible, because they are going to have the longest waiting list, because they have internal referrals always coming through. So substance use programs, same thing, is trying to figure out, which ones are going to be, meeting those individuals' needs best. So if it's they only offer detox with their type of insurance, or if they can get into a 21-day program here or a 45-day program here, obviously we want to go for the 45-day program if the individual is willing to, even if it means maybe being a little bit farther away, which sometimes happens. But being able to get people those services that set them up for success right away is ideal. Getting transportation arranged. So for state benefit programs, individuals can get free transportation to medical services, treatment programs, that sort of thing. So doing that grunt work, calling those services to get the transportation set up so that at 4 o'clock on Thursday, there will be someone there who can transport them to their appointment. That's going to set people up for the best amount of success possible, and hopefully delaying those reactions. And again, these are all things that people are asking for. I'm not forcing these upon anyone. It is individuals who are identifying that this is a need that they want filled. And lastly, doing some of those health insurance applications, either marketplace or state insurance, typically is where I'm helping individuals navigate. So that's kind of my daily work with clients. There's a lot of other things that I do, which is collaborating with community partners. So especially since COVID has hit, I've done a lot more work with community partners to identify individuals who are vulnerable, and get them needs to support service providers and that sort of thing. And I'm just thinking about grabbing this and forgot about it, but we created a community resources in Eau Claire spreadsheet, basically, very visually friendly, was the ideal. If you've never done it before, when you're working with individuals and trying to create resources for individuals who are vulnerable, it's really helpful to use images to help identify different categories and things. The Noun Project is a great resource for that. Maybe check that out. But being able to find resources in the community during the time of COVID has been a little bit more difficult. So we wanted to create grab and go sheets that we put out at laundromats, healthcare facilities, at grocery stores, gas stations, all that sort of thing, so that individuals would have a way to quickly access a resource guide for, again, meeting those basic needs. So yeah, collaborating with individuals, creating some of those how-to sheets, sometimes how-to videos, to help individuals get their needs met. Another thing that I started doing during COVID was creating weekly wellness videos on Facebook, covering different topics. So mindful breathing, benefits of yoga, talking about, this fall I'll be talking about seasonal affective disorder, preparing people for winter, that sort of thing. I've done a lot of blog posts on that in the past. But again, creating resources that people can consume digitally is just as important, because there are individuals in the community who maybe don't feel comfortable talking about it, maybe don't feel comfortable coming to a social worker, but hey, they see a video that talks about some tip sheets or some tips to assist them with some of the feelings of grief or hopelessness that they might be feeling because of COVID, and that is great that they can find a way to consume that in some way and getting those resources still somehow. Okay, and what were we going to talk about? Talking about how to deal with some of those difficulties with how to address some of those needs in our community. So I heard some individuals talking about, well, everybody sends people to the library for this, and we cannot do this. Okay, so we have multiple choices of what we can do in those situations, right? We can be flexible and meet that need somehow, right? I hear you guys saying that yes, you've never been trained on how to assist individuals with applying for unemployment, but you do it anyway, right? That is something you can do if you have the staff time and ability to do that. There is talking to those community partners and saying, stop sending people here for this. This is what we can and cannot do. That's an option, clarifying with those community partners. And then you can also do this proactive approach where you are finding a collaboration with an individual or organization to come in and assist you with meeting those needs. And again, I understand that, we talked about sometimes people want that need filled now, but the more you develop these programs, the better it will be for you to assisting individuals, because they will know what to expect. They will know when they can get help. So the more you can do in that way, the better. These collaborations will benefit you, they'll benefit staff time, and you can find ways to do this best. So one thing you can do too is to have appointments. So we have Tame Your Tech appointments. So these are individuals, our reference librarians volunteer to work with individuals one-on-one to understand technology better. So how to set up a cell phone, how to set up an email account, how to use Microsoft Word, right? getting a little bit better feel for how to utilize these different materials, and they also are also common utilized with how do I use my Kindle with library materials, and how do I set up my tablet to run Kindle books and audiobooks and the Libby app and things like that. So very commonly used for those types of things, and can be used for possibly for things like I need assistance with applying for this, and that way you have designated staff time set aside for assisting these individuals' needs, and you're not feeling, annoyed or rushed or anything like that. So encouraging appointments when possible for some of those services. And again, if you are working with community partners who are referring individuals to the library for this, it'd be important to let them know, again, we can help individuals with X, Y, and Z, but we need them to schedule an appointment, or something like that might be beneficial in mitigating some of those issues you are having. Also, again, exploring what is in the community. So we have a technical college here that runs computer classes, and they will specifically do kind of issue-based. You can do like a general, I want to learn everything class, or you can do I want to know how to browse the internet or make an email account or things like that. And they have self-guided learning applications that assist individuals with that. So again, explore what your community has. It might, or a neighboring community if your community does not have that, and being able to find ways to meet some of those needs. And this, again, is where you can utilize tip sheets and things. So working with the unemployment office to create a tip sheet on how to apply for assistance. If that's something that I don't have time all of the time to meet this need, but this is what I can do, that's a solution, and that's great. We discussed some of the things we're doing with food insecurity. I highly encourage you to explore some of those programs as well. Something I remember too that we did was, this is kind of a dual community awareness and addressing needs and providing materials to individuals who may not otherwise have had access to library services. Is last summer we took our book bike, so we don't have a book mobile or anything like that, like a van. We have a book bike right now, and so we took that to the pop-up food pantries, and we were able to get individuals signed up for library cards and providing little free activity kits and getting families access to books that otherwise we're not accessing our services, because we know that some of the lowest usage rates are individuals of minority status and individuals of low income levels. So trying to get free library services into those people's hands was ideal, and our early literacy librarian went with me on some of those too, in order to, again, just to try to access those individuals and support them where they were at, literally, and get them that support. So just an idea is maybe partnering with, if you have a bookmobile of some kind, or if you have a book bike or whatever it may be, getting to events and community events that are assisting the vulnerable individuals in your community would be super cool. Some individuals brought up smoking and vaping, and I had to giggle a little when I saw that, because I don't know how to fix that issue, to be honest with you. I think it happens everywhere, and being able to roll with it sometimes. So when I address that issue, So when I address that issue, I tend to try to walk with people, right? So I walk with them to where I want them to be, if they're willing to engage. So I introduce myself, say, hey, can you walk with me for a minute? And then walk over to the curb where they're allowed to smoke and say, it was nice chatting with you today, and just so you know, this is actually where we prefer that people smoke, so that they're not coming right out of the library into smoke. And that's just part of our city ordinances and all that jazz. I don't have control over it, but it would really make everybody's lives a little bit easier if this is where you chose to smoke in the future, and I really appreciate that you were able to do that with me today. Things like that. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. I've had people straight out tell me F you before, and you know what? We roll with it. We move on, and they're having a bad day, and oh well. We'll try again next time. So, smoking, vaping, I get it, it's an issue, and just trying to redirect individuals when you can to a different space. That's what I got for you. When it comes to substance use and addiction, there are some things you can do to maybe address some of those issues a little bit further. So, providing smoking quit line cards, that's what we have locally, is little business cards that say call the smoking quit line for free counseling and medication assistance if required, to help with that, which is great. We thankfully have not, knock on wood, had issues with individuals using IV drug use in the library. We have on a couple of occasions had individuals attempt to float the needles in our dispense, the little dispense boxes. So I contacted our local agency that does clean needle exchange and got some advertisements for how to get the clean needles if you need it, and put those next to the boxes and on the boxes, and that hasn't been an issue for a while. And again, I think some of those things are, well, we haven't had customers in the library since March, so who knows how much of it is that and how much of it is these different interventions that we've done. But either way, information's getting out there for the clean needle exchange if individuals need it, and then letting individuals know that if they want support for risk reduction, that's there as well. So that's the ideal, and that is part of, again, the trauma-informed approach is not deciding what people need, but deciding to use risk reduction whenever possible. So again, not telling people you can't smoke, it's redirecting them to the appropriate place, and not telling people you can't have our dirty needles, it's saying here is where you can get some clean needles in order for you to utilize this habit a little bit more safely, and maybe get some fentanyl test strips while you're at it, and all of that jazz. So redirecting and getting people to the best resources possible is helpful. Let's see. Budgeting classes. That comes back to my adulting university idea that having some sort of different variety of some of those, not the basic needs in Maslow, but the next step up is learning how to adult and parent and do all those things, and budgeting can come along with that. So offering those classes, maybe you have a staff member that is super passionate about budgeting. I'm not, I hate numbers, but I still do my best when I can. Maybe you have a staff member that's willing to assist with offering some types of classes. I found incentivizing classes can be very helpful, so maybe you can find Starbucks is willing to donate sandwiches for you to use during your event. Typically very common if you have a Starbucks nearby. They have tons of their sandwiches. They're all prepackaged, ready to go and frozen. Just a pro tip for you all. Feed people, and they will come. Again, probably after COVID, but that can be a very helpful activity. And you can do it as a part of a series too if you wanted to, or it could be part of, it depends how you want to structure it. So if you want to structure it as like adult education classes, great. You could also do it as part of like a social activity. So there is a type of programming that can be done that is commonly known as coffee and conversation. So coffee and conversation is where you're getting people together for social activities, as well as maybe to address some public education or other needs, and you can kind of target different groups of people along with that if you would like to. So again, right before COVID happened, I was preparing to run some of these coffee and conversation classes, but they were, or meetups, but they were going to be kind of targeted at some of our vulnerable individuals, those who are unhoused or low income, and maybe spending a lot of time at the library. So trying to build some of that connection with librarians. I was going to have librarians and other staff members volunteer to host a table. They would help run conversations at the table, just to kind of break the ice and have something social for people to do for an hour. And that can be very helpful if you have elderly individuals in your community that are needing some sort of social structure. You can utilize it as a come, have coffee and sandwiches, and we're going to talk a little bit about budgeting, but we're going to do it in a conversational way. We're not going to do it as in like a class way. So these can be very, very different approaches that one might go better than the other in your community. I don't know what's going to work best in your community. It's up to you guys to find out. But that is an approach that might be helpful. Being a babysitter library or a hub for children and teens is an interesting spot to be in. We are not a huge hub in our library, but I do know communities that do have that happen. So if this is something that you are maybe struggling with, where you don't have the staff capacity to run programming, seeing if there is any sort of partnership that you can create to build up a volunteer base to run programming would be super ideal. If not, other individuals in your community might not realize that this is a problem, right? That there are kids unattended who need structure. So your role could be facilitating getting a group of people together. That could be individuals from a school district or volunteer programs or things like that, and just we're having a conversation meeting. And it's not saying you're going to solve a problem, but just getting people together to have a conversation about this issue. And again, you don't have to lead that, but you can lead getting people together in order to have that conversation. I know of a really great community that actually had something similar happen, and the school was able to step up and fill some of that need alongside a local tribal community. So my brother works in Lac du Flambeau School District in Upper Wisconsin, and they have a large Native American community. And they ended up being able to step up and find in-school, after-school programming for individuals. And what was really cool is they had a great focus on offering a wide variety of cultural classes. So this was twofold, and part of it was so that the First Nations students had an opportunity to learn more about their culture in a structured environment, and also it exposed some of those white students and other students to some of those cultural components. So they would have opportunities to sign up for things like making moccasins or beading or cooking. So really cool opportunities to explore some of those traditional cultural things, and having different people come together to kind of meet that need was super cool. So they have volunteers from the community. There's one of the librarians comes in and does some storytelling alongside it. It was just a cool way to take an approach to the we have rogue children problem. And I understand, right, that every community has different resources and abilities, but no matter what, I think you will find volunteers somehow, somewhere, and being able to provide that support for children. And maybe it's, again, just you guys bringing awareness to that this is something that is an issue. Lack of mental health care. So that is something that can get brought up. I was talking before about the fact that there is sometimes those crises that can happen. There's also maybe meeting some of those needs in alternative ways. So one of my goals is actually to partner with our free clinic and then partner with a marriage and family therapy program that is 25 minutes away from here, and allowing students to get some of their internship hours here at the library in a drop-in clinic. So that is my dream for next year, hopefully getting it set up so that it can start as soon as some of these COVID restrictions start lifting, so that we can have a drop-in mental health clinic. My goal would be once a week for our community size to be able to meet individuals' needs. Because again, sometimes people don't qualify for health insurance for a variety of reasons. Maybe they make just too much money, where on Marketplace the best deal that they can find is like $400, $500 a month for health insurance, and that is just not something within their capacity to afford. But they need their health needs met somehow. So again, offering a low barrier opportunity is my ultimate goal, to get some sort of drop-in mental health services available for our community. I know this can be done in other ways as well, where maybe partnering with someone to come in on a reoccurring basis to do wellness workshops, to do yoga in the library, to help individuals dabble with and explore some of those different ways of taking care of themselves and their bodies, is kind of the goal there. So you can support community mental health in a variety of different ways. And this is where I'm kind of going to branch into some of the public education components of what I do. One of the things that we are doing right now during COVID is we have a story walk. So we have different pages of a children's book that are situated along a trail that's right next to the library. And awesome activity for families to be able to get out and do and read a book together in an active way, right? And I was thinking, this is genius, let's take it a step further. So I've mentioned we live in Wisconsin, where winter sucks. So we have a county based organization called Winter Mission, and I thought I want to work alongside them to try to find, again, an interactive way of getting people active. And I haven't decided exactly how this is going to look yet, but probably exploring different types of stations and stopping along a trail to maybe listen to a clip on mindfulness, to practice, breathing exercises, or standing tall like a tree, or different types of things that individuals can interact with and explore along a route. And I think this still, this connects with our library's mission to support community well-being. So doing that, we are also have really stepped up a lot of our efforts this year on community education, especially related to racial issues. All of you know that there was a huge eruption in some of the racial unrest because of the George Floyd killing, which was an hour and a half away from where we are. And it has inspired different types of protests in our community. Thankfully, we've been able to fare very well in them, that they've been peaceful. I'm not saying that anything unpeaceful is bad, it just has been nice to be in a environment where our library has not been at risk, and we're able to keep doing our work. So I've started thinking about how we can do different things. So we developed a equity, diversity, and inclusion committee, and one of the things that someone had brought up was La Crosse, Wisconsin, just south of here, did something called a Footsteps Project. And this is where some of these cool things get tied together with libraries, reference, and archives, and all of that stuff kind of came together. And they did stories. So they did a different type of story walk where different stations in the community had stories of different racial experiences. So that's something that I thought would be really cool to replicate. We are lucky to have a Chippewa Valley Museum in Eau Claire here that is willing to partner with us a little bit. They've got a lot of stuff going on as well, but again, we're pulling in from those different community partners to make something cool happen for the community. So a couple of those different more active things that I'm thinking about right now when it comes to public education and public wellness. We do community reads. So once a year we have a one book, one community, huge production. It is like 4 to 6 weeks of multiple times a week different events and keynote speakers and movies and things that all come together to support learning for individuals and really diving deep. And so we've made it part of our mission as well to choose books that are challenging in some way, and so being able to offer public education and things like that along top of it, it just piles on top of these missions of helping the community learn and do better and support our vulnerable individuals. So that is something, if you don't have that going on, if you have an ability to do some type of community read, those have been incredibly popular for us. And again, the programming that can go along with it just can blow up and be huge. So that's amazing. After I started a program that has just been growing and developing into new things, and we call it Tough Topics. So Tough Topics started initially as me evaluating our stacks for materials that addressed tough needs. So it's things like books about and supporting individuals who've gone through an abortion experience, or sexual assault, or domestic violence, or mental health, experiences of depression, self-help books, mindfulness, all of those different types of things. And I will, and this grew into, then I created along with our programming department, which we're so lucky to have, a bookmark that sits at the front of the library and then in a couple areas in the stacks with the call numbers, so people can look up, STIs, and then they can find where the call number is for books about STIs. So that then grew into what we call the Tough Topics Book Club, and this has now been applied in several different ways. So initially it was, we chose tougher topics to discuss, and these are related to experiences of homelessness, experiences of mental health, experiences of different racial backgrounds, and some of the different experiences that can come along with that. And what has been really cool is we offered this as a book club, hosted discussions around it, and now we have created these into kits. So these kits can be checked out by other libraries that maybe want to replicate this, or book clubs that already exist in a private matter in communities that maybe want to check them out and utilize it. So that's been really cool. And then the next step we're taking is actually to transfer this into our youth services department and trying to create tough topic conversations and activities to help parents in particular, because at the time it was very much geared at public education, just talking to adults about some of those hard things. And now we're going to be talking about how to assist children with having some of those hard conversations. So that has been a cool next step that we've had going on with that program. The other thing that I can take no credit for, along with the community read, I can take no credit for, but we do a reading challenge. So this is a journal that gets put out at the beginning of every year that individuals can sign up for, and every month they challenge readers to take in different materials that might be different or difficult than that an individual might have normally read. So it's things like there's always one that connects with our community read, but then there's also things like read a book by an author of a different ethnicity, religion, gender identity, sexuality, or life experience than your own. So again, these are not forcing, anyone can do what they want, but it is challenging individuals to take on different materials that maybe they would not have otherwise utilized. So using the library as a platform for further education to deal with learning about different backgrounds. So that is some of what I've done, some of what my library has done to address some of these needs, and again, how you might apply some of these different programs to your community. I just realized I totally forgot about one thing, which was a Narcan program. So if you are experiencing increased rates of drug use in your community, you might want to consider Narcan. Narcan is a controversial topic sometimes, but it is anyone can distribute it. There's training that I highly recommend that goes alongside it. The best thing that can happen is that you save a life, right? The worst thing that can happen is you might have to deal with just, a slightly traumatic experience in having to administer it. But it's not, it is less traumatic than having a customer die in your library, for sure. So supporting staff if they want to learn and become trained in Narcan distribution, having a social service provider on staff that is willing to distribute that, you can't go wrong, in my opinion, when it comes to Narcan. There maybe is some safety things that need to be addressed alongside it, but I apologize for looping back, but I just remembered I forgot to talk about that as an option in supporting libraries in supporting their customers who are in high need. So I hope that helps address just some of those different what can I do to help address my community needs, whether it be the social worker addressing them or what can you do to help address some of those needs. And again, a lot of it is collaboration, and finding those resources that will help you do your work better and easier. So we'll stop there, and I will come back and talk a little bit about what we can do as staff members and fostering environments in that way. So